You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. You know, it's not a bad time to be a White Sox fan. It really isn't. I mean, they're not a great team, but you got young talent. You got a few guys starting to put together. They're interesting. They're winning some games. They're not like what they were last year, but what makes it fun is some of the stuff surrounding the team, right? Like Jerry Reinsdorf's getting deposed. He's going to get deposed over that shooting that supposedly happened in 2023 in the ballpark. You know, one that's always been denied, like, oh, it didn't happen in the ballpark. Although all of us have a friend that was nearby it. Like, I think at this point, we all know somebody who's in the ballpark who's like, oh, I heard the shot. I mean, I have a few of them. So it's interesting that the chairman's going to get deposed. I love that. Answer a few questions about security and how you run things over there, because you do a terrible job. And I love that it'll be under oath. I hope I get to see the public record. I'm sure I can. I'm going to hunt it down. I can't wait to see what they ask him. I hope they hammer him when they depose him. Winkelman Gonzalez is coming up, another acquisition, going into the bullpen. Let's see what he can do. I think they always wanted him to be a starter, but I think they're going to make him a bullpen guy. So that's interesting. The Pope is wearing a White Sox hat. He's going out in public in a White Sox hat. And there's video of people chanting White Sox. And he looks at them and smiles and waves. And that's how you would get me. Like if I were the Pope and everybody was yelling my first name, trying to get my attention as I ride through the crowd in the Pope-mobile, White Sox would get me, right? Like you're in Rome. I mean, they're foreign accents that are yelling White Sox. Like, you know, these are not Southsiders chanting it. But the people have figured out if you yell White Sox, this Pope will look at you. And it's just the funniest thing to see online. If you haven't seen it, look it up. It's great. So it's kind of a fun time to be a Sox fan. And on this episode today, Ed's not here. He's off with the family. You got me for 30 minutes of Sox, brought to you by Cork and Carry at the Park, 33rd in Princeton, shadow of the ballpark, award-winning burgers, ballpark favorites, indoor-outdoor seating. Really one of the best staffs of any establishment in Chicago. Every time I'm there, they're so friendly. They're so wonderful. They're so nice. They get you your food right away. And if you think about how crazy it is pregame, and everybody's trying to hurry up and eat, but they want to make it to the game, they do an amazing job. The food is really good. And make it your stop. All right? Pre-game, post-game, in-game, the home of Sox in the Basement. Cork and Carry at the Park. See more at corkandcarry.com. But with Ed gone, I was thinking about what I want to do on this show by myself, and I keep seeing everybody talking about 2005. Like, this is it. This is the big anniversary. Everybody wants to focus on it. The team wants to focus on it because the team is so bad. We got authors putting out books. There's a few of them that want to get on the show. We may have one or two of them on in the coming months. One of them I found really interesting I was reading about today. I'm definitely trying to get the author on. And this is the time, I think, right here, to kind of chat about '05. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to chat a little. I'm going to give a couple of stories from '05 that you probably won't hear anywhere else. Because '05 was an interesting year for me. Okay? Like '05, I was newly married. I just got out of radio. I had my first kid on the way. We learned she was on the way after the season started. But the first story I got to tell you is the beginning of the season. Beginning of the season in '05, remember Mark Burley wins his first game of the year, opening day, 1-0. They actually win the World Series last game, 1-0. And they led wire to wire with an 11-1 record through the postseason, which is the greatest winning percentage, tied with the Yankees. I want to say the 97 Yankees, 98 Yankees, for the best winning percentage through the playoffs ever, with the exception of if a team, when they were just going to the World Series, swept the World Series. It's incredible. They're one of the most dominant teams in the history of Major League Baseball, the '05 White Sox. They don't get credit for that, but they are. The stats show it. Wire to wire, first place, 11-1 in the postseason. And it was one of the lowest rated World Series ever. And ESPN never wants to recognize the White Sox won the World Series. They're one of the greatest teams of all time, the 05 White Sox. If you just take what they did and their record compared to their contemporaries at the time, and you just look at their season and what they did, one of the most dominant teams, if you look at one season in the history of Major League Baseball. Look at that playoff run. Nobody else could say that they did that except for one team in the 90s. The Sox were incredible. But as the season started, a lot of people might not remember this or realize it. The University of Illinois men's basketball team on that same day was trying to win a national championship. Now, I went to U of I, and my dad was talking to me that morning. And he was like, one of your teams could finally win a championship. Because, I was alive for the Bears, but I was a little kid, right? As a kid born in 1977, trying to claim the 85 Bears like I suffered and got a win, it doesn't seem right. And the Bulls, I was only a Bulls fan when they were in the playoffs. I'll admit that. I was a Michael Jordan fan because he was the best basketball player ever. But, I only really watched the Bulls in the playoffs. I'll admit that I was a bandwagoner. And that's really all I had in my lifetime until 2005. But I went to Illinois, and I loved Illini basketball. And I was really excited about that team. D. Brown, Luther Head, Darren Williams, Robert Archibald. I could probably get them all if I sat here long enough and tried to think of everybody that was on that team. And they're going to play for the national championship that same day as opening day. And my dad's like, what do you think? And I said, I would give this up in a heartbeat for the White Sox to win the World Series at some point in my lifetime. I remember saying it to him. And he started laughing at me. And as if to prove to him that the White Sox were the most important team in my fandom. In front of my dad and my grandfather, God rest his soul, who passes before 2005 ends. He gets to see the World Series. Dies less than a month later. Maybe a little bit more than a month. But he doesn't make it much longer than that, which was a gift that he got to see the White Sox finally win a World Series. But in front of the two of them, I dropped to my knees and I was like, Dear Lord, please let the Illini win the national championship, unless, of course, I can trade it for the White Sox winning the World Series. And everybody laughed. That night, the Illini, who should have won, get terrible referee calls all night long. I don't know. I don't know why that happened. I did pray in the morning that I would trade it for a White Sox World Championship. And the White Sox win 1-0 on opening day. And they win 1-0 when they win the World Series. I'm not taking credit. I'm just saying it's weird. It's weird. And as the season got started, the Sox got off to an amazing start. Now, think about the White Sox for a moment. As a fan, no matter how long your fandom is gone, one of the biggest shortcomings of Jerry Reinsdorf is that his teams, no matter who the general manager is, generally don't spend the money they should in the offseason. Even when they're competing, they will spend just enough and then tell you in spring training, if we get off to a good start, we'll add. That's the White Sox philosophy, at least for the last many decades, which makes no sense. As a businessman, again, he's a failure. Because you play in a cold weather town, you're constantly trying to tell your fan base once it warms up, we'll be good. But White Sox fans respond to winning. If you get off to a slow start, people don't show up. Your ballpark doesn't get the attendance. And that's it. And that's why he spends the way he spends. If only he spent and created teams meant to get out of the gate quickly, his attendance would have been better over all these years. And that's why 05 was just a surprising start. They were breaking records with that start. In fact, they were the quickest start, I want to say, since 1959, when they had gone to the World Series last. They actually sweep the Dodgers dramatically. I want to say A.J. Pierzynski hits a big home run. And they sweep the Dodgers, who beat them in 59. And that's when interleague play was really new in 05. So that was a big deal. So there's all this excitement happening early on in the season. And they felt like something big that was going on. And meanwhile, I was just trying to figure out what I was doing after radio. I had worked as a security guard. I remember in the off season, I was sitting at a desk at the security guard station. I was on the north side, or at River North area, just north of the river, Freeman Properties. There's a like a warehousey looking building that's off of LaSalle next to the bridge along the river. And I was the front desk guy. My uncle got me that job. And I would open up the newspaper every day and look at the list of free agents. And I would tell my dad, like, you know what we need to do? We need to go get Brzezinski and die. I mean, every year I would yell and scream like this is what I would do, and they would never do it. For some reason, they went and did something that I wanted. I mean, this team felt like my team in 2005. It really did. And then, I left that. I tried to start my first company. Didn't work out. 2 months after I tried to start it, it was not going to work. Started working for some company up on the north side doing marketing. And I would travel all the way to Evanston every day and back again. So a lot of my White Sox watching was me listening on my earphones with an actual radio to the beginning of a game till I got home or stopped someplace and watched the game. But that's how my 05 started. They started red hot. I started in the middle of a transitional year for me. Out of radio, new marriage, baby on the way, changing jobs, trying to figure it all out. If you're trying to figure it all out with your windows, look at that transition. Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest wants to help you. For exterior windows, doors, patio doors, and storm doors, look no further than Window and Door Superstore in Oak Forest. They've been doing it for over 40 years. They send nobody to your house. You go and see them. And this is why. If you go into their showroom, you see everything the way that it's meant to be. You're not looking at an example. You're not looking at something that was in the back of somebody's car that they may not even have in stock anymore. You're seeing everything right there. You can ask any question you want to an owner on site in the showroom. They have one on site when they put in the windows or the doors. All major brands, custom made, no stock items for a perfect fit. They're a half block east of 159th originally at 6280 159th Street. See more at windowdooroakforest.com. So the summer progresses, and the next really funny story that I remember from 2005 is right around July. I want to say the Mariners are in town, and my dad and I have tickets, and somebody gave him tickets right on the dugout for the visitors down the first base line. So we got our beers on the dugout. And it's the Mariners and it's the White Sox. Lou Piniella managing the Mariners. And a brand new player is joining the White Sox by the name of Bobby Jenks. Now, we had heard that he was really good in terms of how fast he could throw the ball, but we didn't know anything else about him. And the Sox bring him out to close a game. Close game against the Mariners. I think the first pitch he throws is well over 100. And that's when that was rare. The next one he throws is over 100. The next one he throws is over 100. And there's Lou standing at the top of the stairs. And he turns around and looks at me and Dad, looks right at us, and he goes, "Where the bleep did you get this guy from?" It's my one interaction in my life with Lou Piniella. Because he just starts talking with me and my father. Right there at the top of the thing. "Where'd you get this guy from?" And my father starts laughing like, "I don't know. I think they pulled him out of the woods," I was reading in the newspaper. He was such an unknown. And one of the things that people maybe don't remember is that season starts with Shingo Takatsu as the closer. Shingo had been interesting in 2004, was terrible in 2005. Then Dustin Hermanson takes over, but he has back problems. In fact, my aunt, who's an anesthesiologist, was relaying to us as the season was going on that Hermanson was taking a lot of treatment. Like, I actually knew somebody who was very aware of the treatment he was taking. He was having all kinds of back problems. The Sox had no closer. Bobby Jenks comes along, and he's a revelation for the second half. When you sit around and you watch these videos, I don't know if they're going to talk about that, but that's a complete and utter chance. Like, nobody even heard of him when the season started. He was never in their plans. He shows up halfway through, and he becomes one of the more iconic guys in 2005, which is Bobby Jenks. So the White Sox progressed through the year, and I just remember it being one of those just fun seasons. Even when the Indians tried to catch the Sox, and that's what they were called back then, so I get to use that name. The Indians are almost upon the White Sox late. The Joe Crede game happens. He hits a big home run. Staves them off from tying up the White Sox in the standings. That's why they go wire to wire. Guillen in the paper. I remember the headline because my brother-in-law, his whole family are Cub fans. We went to a gathering at their house, and his dad had the Tribune, like front page. He had it magneted onto his refrigerator, where it's just Guillen saying, "We stink." Like, Cub fans were reveling in the White Sox falling apart in August. Like, in August, as the Sox gave up, I want to say, a 15-game lead, and it dropped down to 1. On the north side, there was celebration because the team was so special. Like, everybody knew they had a chance at winning the World Series. Even Cub fans knew it. They knew it. They had just blown it in 2003, and now they're watching the Sox in 2005, and they knew it was going to happen. They were terrified that it was going to happen. So they were so excited when the Sox were falling apart. And somehow, some way, it doesn't happen. And then they go on a run, and they win the division, and then the postseason starts. You know, I got to see a couple postseason games, and I know a lot of other people saw them too. I got to see game 1 of all 3 series. The plan was, Dad was able to get his hands on tickets for the entire playoffs. I mean, I'll just throw it out there. He was a high-ranking guy in Chicago Police Department. He was offered tickets. He would not take them for free. He said, "I'm not taking them for free, but I'll purchase them." He bought them all for face value. And because of that, we sold game 2 of every series to pay for the rest of the tickets. And that's what we did. Okay? So we paid for them. And so we would go to game 1 and sell game 2, which right then and there tells you exactly what we missed. Like, game 2 was like the best game in like every series. Wasn't it? Like, game 2 in every series was the best game. And that's what we were always like, well, look, they're not good enough to win the whole series, right? Like, they can't sweep. Like, they might win a series. I'll say that differently. They're not good enough to sweep a series, but there's no way but they could win it, right? So we'll sell game 2 all the time to pay for the tickets. And then what we'll do is we'll be there for game 6 or game 7 when they win a series. So, you know, what did we miss? We missed some of the craziest moments. We missed AJ with the drop third strike thing. We were at home watching that on TV. We missed the Pasetnik walk-off home run and the Canerico grand slam in game 2. Because our thing was like, no matter what happens in game 2, there's no way this team is sweeping. They go 11-1 through the postseason. I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, I can't complain. They won the World Series. But, I mean, like, that's how it all went for us. And I remember it was, like, a lot of fun in game 1. They had a ton of home runs. Pasetnik hits his first home run of the year in game 1 of the ALDS, or the Wild Card Series. Whatever that was. Division Series, Championship, Division Series, ALDS. You never know what they changed the name so many times. The ALDS back in 2005. But my big thing from that series was the El Duque game. And I think a lot of people remember that. Game 3. And I'm trying to get back from work. And I can't make it all the way home. My sister at the time, I believe, is working for the mayor's office. Or she was working for the White Sox at the time. She might have been working for them. But she's downtown. And she goes, "Let's go meet at Miller's Pub." And I'm going to tell you that story because I love that story after the Sox Nerd. It is now time for the Sox Nerd, Dave Marin, who brings all those tidbits to the scoreboard at the rate and joins Sox in the Basement each and every weekend. And he's brought to you by the Village of Lamont. Want to experience the downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore, and see everything they have going on this weekend and beyond at lamontdowntown.com. Nerd, what do you got for me?
Just when you thought it was safe to come out, here I go again. I bet you all thought we were finished with White Sox catcher pickoffs at third base when Matt Thaiss was dealt to Tampa Bay. To refresh your memory, Theis was sent to the Rays with 2 pickoffs at third to his credit. He was the first Sox backstop since Ed Herman in 1972 and 10th overall to nail multiple stray runners at the hot corner. Well, Edgar Caro has quickly joined that club. In the second game of Thursday's doubleheader, Caro picked off the Cardinals' Nolan Gorman at third with an absolute gem of a throw. Coupled with his back pick of Adley Rutschman in Baltimore on June 1st, Caro became the 11th Sox catcher and third rookie with at least 2 pickoffs at third in a season. The last Sox catcher with 3 pickoffs at third in a season was Sherm Lawler in 1955, and the club record is 5, set by Buck Krause in 1927. By the way, the other rookies on this list are Cam Carrion in 1961 and Walt Kuhn in 1912. Moving on, Volo's Ryan Noda became the 49th Illinois native to homer for the Sox when he hit his first round tripper with the club on Thursday. The first Illinoisan to go deep for the Sox was Chicago's John Skopek, a pitcher, on April 30th, 1901 in the franchise's 6th game ever. Peoria's Jim Thome is the Sox all-time leader among Illinois natives with 134 homers, followed by Chicago's Greg Luzinski at 84. Noda made his first hit with the White Sox a home run. Others who have done that include Thome, Tim Elko, Paul Konerko, Julio Franco, and Minnie Minoso. Position players pitching isn't unique or as fun as it once was, but it is interesting to note that Vinny Capra is just the 5th pure position player in Sox history to take the mound more than one time in a season. The others are Josh Harrison, Matt Davidson, Hanser Alberto, and the pride of Thief River Falls, Minnesota, Wayne Nordhagen. And even though it happened about a week ago, I can't let a Sox pitcher batting go without referencing it. On June 14th, Tyler Alexander became the first Sox pitcher to bat in an American League game since Floyd Bannister grounded out to end the 24th inning in that record marathon of May 8th and 9th, 1984 against Milwaukee at Comiskey Park. Alexander was the first Sox pitcher to bat in an AL road game since Mo Drabowski grounded out to end the 13th on September 19, 1972 in Oakland. My zinger? In honor of the 20th anniversary of the World Champions, I'm going to zing frequently about that team, throwing out some gems you may not know about the 2005 Sox. The Champs only had one player from Illinois on the roster, and that was Lebanon's Neil Kotz, who went to Lebanon High School and Illinois State University and also pitched for the Cubs. That's it, guys. Probably more than you wanted to know about back picks, Land of Lincoln launchings, and hitting pitchers.
So Game 3 of the ALDS, we all remember it. Sox load up the bases. El Duque comes in, no outs, gets out of the jam. My favorite part of that, though, is what was going on with me and my sister in Miller's Pub downtown. We're surrounded by Cubs fans. That's just how this city is, right? If you're anywhere except for on the actual south side, everybody's against you, especially then. They were so angry that we had a chance. Remember, the Cubs blew it in 03. And in 05, here we are, and we look like a team of destiny. So I get to the pub, and my buddy Joe Signorelli, Minnesota Joe, I mentioned him recently, he passed away, architect, just starting out. And his entire architecture firm is at Miller's Pub because the owner wants to do a team building event. It's a Friday night. And we walk in, and my sister and I are very vocal White Sox fans. And Joe is from Minnesota, so he's a Twins fan. And he comes up to us and he goes, "Hey guys, look, I know you're going to get really excited during this game, but if you could just be kind of quiet. I mean, this is my boss. I just started this job." And of course, we don't listen to him. We're obnoxious. I mean, the entire bar is rooting for the Red Sox. They're all Cub fans in the city of Chicago, rooting against the White Sox in the bar in downtown Chicago. So as the Sox are winning, we're talking crap. And when the Sox start to blow it and those bases get loaded up, they're talking crap back to us. Meanwhile, here's Joe. He's sunk down in his seat. He does not want to be associated with us in any way whatsoever. He's embarrassed that his friends are in the bar And his boss is stoically watching this game. There's this whole like giant couple tables put together, this entire architecture firm. Nobody showing any emotion. These two loudmouths, who he doesn't want to be associated with, are taking on the whole bar verbally while we're watching the game. And El Duque comes in and gets the first out and gets the second out. And we're getting louder and louder and louder. And I remember how intense it was. And now here comes the third out. Damon goes around, and he did. Chris Berman doesn't agree, but he did. Strike three, he's out. Sox out of the inning. Sister and I jump up, dive into each other's arms in the middle of Miller's Pub. I believe we had middle fingers in the air for the crowd because they were all so shocked because they were rooting against the White Sox. We're in Chicago in a bar that's rooting against the White Sox. And all of a sudden, this other guy jumps in with the two of us, starts jumping around. And it wasn't my buddy Joe, it was his boss. Turns out the guy who ran the entire firm was a big White Sox fan who was just trying to act right in front of his employees. And now is hugging the two of us. The next guy into our little circle jumping around was Joe, who immediately was like, these are my friends. And that's what I remember about that game. And how amazing it was after they won to walk through the city, because that was the first time you had really won a playoff series. Like that felt like winning the World Series when they won that one. That's what that felt like, right? Even when they lost game one, I was at game one of the ALCS and they lost that game. And it felt like they should have won it because the Angels, I think, had just played like 5 hours earlier. They had gone well into the night, had to turn right around, fly to Chicago and play. You thought, oh, we're going to win this game. They lost. Even after they lost that game, I felt like that team was going to win. So they make it to the World Series. But before they get to the World Series, they have to play for the pennant. And rather than bore you with the thing that everybody's going to talk about, which is the World Series, right? You know, I was there at game one when Ozzie throws out his hands and asks for the big guy. I remember Houston, you have a problem signs. When Jinx comes out, they're playing that POD song. You know, boom, here comes the boom. And everybody's like just screaming it. Like the place was electric game one. When they won the whole thing, I'm on the ground with my father and just we're clutching each other, crying. My sister, me and him just in the middle of the floor in his living room. Sad that we didn't get to be there because it was in Houston. But we assumed it was going to take longer, but just so overjoyed. You know, my uncle driving in from 2 hours away from Ottawa, Illinois in the middle of the night just so he can party along Western Avenue with the rest of us. Like, I could get into that. But my favorite story of '05 as we get to the end of this episode is when they clinched the pennant. See, my dad had always kept a bottle of champagne from his wedding in 1976 in the back of the refrigerator. He saved it in case the White Sox ever won the pennant. Not the World Series, the pennant, because he didn't believe the White Sox could ever win the World Series. So this was if they ever won the pennant. So my sister and I grew up our entire lives with this bottle of champagne in the back of the refrigerator that was only meant if the White Sox won the pennant. This is something we saw on a daily basis. We knew what it was. That's the pennant bottle that was never going to be open. So we're ready for this bottle. In about the fourth inning of the game that they end up winning the pennant, with us all over at Dad's house, my ex-wife, I mean, this should have been the signal that this was not going to last forever. She starts having false labor pains 6 weeks before the babies do. I mean, everybody in the house knew that this was a cry for attention, but nobody wanted to, like, be a jerk. And I kept saying, like, I know it's not, this baby's not coming. But she insisted on it. So I had to get in the car in the fourth or fifth inning, in the middle of the biggest game of my fandom, and drive to Christ Hospital. I don't think I stopped at any red light. I blew every light. I kind of wanted to be arrested just so that like, I could watch the game in peace from like a cell. I was so annoyed. So we get to Christ. I come walking in. I can hear her telling the nurse, like, you need to find me a room with a TV or this baby's going to grow up without a daddy because he's going to leave me. Like, she knew I was annoyed. Even though I knew there was no baby coming. And by the way, no baby comes. Not for another 6 weeks. Okay? You could tell. I don't know what her deal was that night. But we go up to the maternity ward. And I remember as we got to the floor, that's when AJ had run up the line in that game and purposely pushed the ball out of the pitcher's hand going up to first base. because I stopped and left her in the wheelchair to run over with these other dads and watch the replay to find out what was going on. So now we finally get into the room, and a nurse comes in and goes, "Are you going to be watching the game?" And I go, "Yeah." And she goes, "We were told we weren't allowed to watch the game. We can't keep a TV on, but we can't stop you from watching it. So would you mind, if something important happens, us coming in to see it?" I didn't even ask permission. I was so annoyed I was there. I was like, "Yes, of course. You guys can come in." So I'm watching the game and the nurses keep popping their heads in and stuff like that. And my favorite moment of the entire 05 season, honest to goodness, my favorite moment of the 05 season is when the White Sox win the pennant. Because as the White Sox win the pennant, my ex, waiting to have our firstborn, is in those stirrups being examined by some doctor who had an accent that suggested he didn't watch baseball, who was very confused as to why the dad, 4 nurses, and a guy with a mop and a bucket, I am not lying, are watching the final out and hugging each other and crying inside of the room while he's giving the examination. It was like an episode of Friends, except it was funnier. And it's one of my greatest memories of 05. The fact that like a bunch of strangers in a hospital, the one dad that was like, "Yeah, I'm keeping the game on because this isn't happening over here. I know she's not having this baby. This is just what she is." Man, I mean, like seriously, I was another 19 years before I figured that out completely. But like that's what was going on. And that's one of my favorite moments of 05. I mean, hugging my dad and, you know, him hiding behind a post while Bobby Jenks was pitching in the 8th inning against Jeff Bagwell in game 1. And he was so afraid to look. He was standing up at the top of the stands down the third base line, hiding behind one of the concrete posts like he was watching the movie Aliens for the first time. All those things are amazing moments. But I think watching them win the pennant, even though I missed out on the champagne, which by the way stained all their clothes. It would have ruined this jersey I'm wearing, because it was old and it was pink champagne. That may have been my favorite moment. Me and the guy with the mop and the bucket and the 4 or 5 random nurses and the doctors who I had never met hugging each other inside of the examination room at Christ Hospital.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.